In order to finish first, you first have to finish. KTM was months away from releasing a game-changer machine that could have saved the Austrians from bankruptcy. A prototype that saw into the future, predicted our modern adventure bike craze, and yet, a project the Austrians decided to axe. This is the story of the industry's biggest what if, possibly the greatest mistake of the past decades. Here's what happened to the KTM 490 Adventure Twin. It wasn't long ago when our motorcycle landscape looked drastically different. And to understand how far ahead KTM was thinking, we have to understand how far behind we all were just a few years ago. In 2018, KTM announced their new 790 Adventure platform. A 95 horsepower parallel twin, the Stallion was the first modern contender to enter the ring. Sure, by then Yamaha had been teasing their T7 for years, but other than hopes and dreams, we never got anything else. Both companies saw the future. As soon as the 790 hit showroom floors, it was an instant success. Think about it, by then, the 790 was the only modern ADV on the market. Yamaha's T7 was still not out yet. Even then, I would argue the Austrians saw way further into the future. In the fall of 2019, during EICMA, they announced a new light adventure bike, the 390. In a way, this was the granddaddy of modern light ADVs. Even though it never quite hit the mark. It was only powered by a 390cc single, sporting modest ground clearance and suspension. Also, at launch, you could only get the bike with cast wheels, a big deterrent for any serious off-roader. Ultimately, KTM had the right idea. They realized that soon people were going to desire smaller, lighter adventure bikes. Motorcycles that could travel miles on the highway, but still be a hoon to thrash off the beaten path. They saw where the future was headed. But it feels to me as if they were afraid to fully commit. And so, that first generation 390? It was a decent bike, but for many, it just missed the mark. We have to be honest here, that 390 was technically not the first light adventure bike. At the same time, before 2020, calling these machines adventure bikes was debatable. We had offerings like the Kawasaki Versys X300 or the BMW G310 GS. Motorcycles that managed to hit a good price point, but with road-oriented wheels and suspension, these were not off-road machines. They were dressed-up street bikes. The crossovers of the motorcycling world. Back then, there was another way of thinking. Manufacturers seemingly didn't believe a good light ADV would work. I mean, for complete beginners, those offerings were enough. For the rest, obviously any experienced rider would not settle for a 400, so they would all leap towards the midweight 800s, right? Almost. Except for one company. The Austrians placed a major bet. And it's crazy to think just how accurate they were. For all their stupid decisions, this would have been absolute genius. In August 2019, KTM put out a management presentation detailing the future lineup of motorcycles within the group. Inside their product portfolio, we could see a new vertical, the 500s, a 490cc adventure bike, a naked and many more, also for their Blue Husky cousins. Just a couple months later, Stefan Pirer confirmed the rumors in an interview for Cycle News. That's when the bombshell dropped. The Austrians were working closely in collaboration with Bajaj on developing a new 500cc platform. Most of the development was done in India with the help of a team of engineers from Europe. After research, Bajaj was going to undertake production and manufacture the finished platform. KTM's CEO saw the small twin as the ultimate bike. And it was. Think about it, that would perfectly fit an emerging A2 license market in European countries, a place where more premium light bikes were strongly in demand. But also, that same engine would serve the Indian premium market, where a 500cc twin would have been considered almost luxury. That 490 would have hit two birds with one stone. It sounds like they had the perfect plan. Looking back, how on earth did they fail? This is the point where I started having some doubts. This 490 twin was a very good idea, but not alongside their 390, surely. In hindsight, we know KTM tended to be a bit delusional with sales volumes and expectations, but even then, surely these two platforms are going to cannibalize each other. So, logically, the 390 should have been a stopgap, a bike whose purpose was to test the waters and bridge the transition to the newer twin. At least, that's what I thought. In reality, it seems like KTM's leadership had been drinking the Kool-Aid, because from what we can see, their intentions were to keep both. And you know what's really crazy? This all happened in 2019. Remember, the first T7 was sold in fall of that year. The US only saw Yamaha's midweight 1 year later, and yet KTM was contemplating not just the existence of a light adventure, but of how many to offer. The 2020s saw massive growth figures for the Austrians, and with that, a sort of arrogance seemingly developed. Nothing could stomp on their growth, and that's probably why the 390 and 490 platforms went ahead at the same time. In a way, KTM had done that previously. If you look at their dirt bike lineup, they sell the 250 and the 350, 450 and the 500. The similar displacement strategy has been working for them in the off-road world. Why wouldn't it work for adventure bikes? I mean, there are reasons. For one, take the 450 and 500. They are essentially the same bike. Even the engines are basically the same, just one having a different cylinder and piston. But other than that, they are identical. A 390 and 490? Those would have been completely different. Even if there was enough of a market for both, the manufacturing costs would have been through the roof. Yet still, at the same time, the only way the market could go was up. Of course, the pandemic slammed on everyone's brakes shortly after. Many factories and businesses closed, but for the motorcycle industry, this was a gift in disguise. Leisure vehicle sales went off the charts, everyone sold as many bikes as they would produce. Despite some controversies, their 790 was still flying off showroom floors, and KTM kept pumping more and more of them. At first, the pandemic was a blessing for the Austrian manufacturer. But in hindsight, we realized this was more of a curse. A curse the Austrians were months away from. Those months could have been so much better if they subscribed to our Patreon page. With a big update on the horizon, that's the best place to support us directly. Link down in the description. Now, about that 490. During an interview for a French magazine, Stefan Pirer confirmed yet again the work being done on KTM's new 490 twin platform. In spite of COVID setbacks, the brand was full speed ahead with research and development. And here we got some crucial information. For one, it's clear that by then, the 390 showed KTM that interest was there. It motivated them to work on the better 490 platform. But even more so, Pirer told journalists that the new small twins were going to come out as 2022 models. This means the first bikes would come out at some point in 2021, and this interview happened in September 2020. Literally months away. What this tells me, KTM had to be extremely close to having a production-ready bike. Because 6 months in motorcycle development? That's nothing. I really believe that 490 was inches away from leaving the factory doors. If I were a betting man in the early 2020s, I would have said the small KTM twin was a certainty. The new 890 was a hit, with its rally edition selling out within hours. Despite camshaft worries, those motorcycles sold like hotcakes. Meanwhile, the little 390 got spoked wheels as an option. A couple years later, they brought back the 790 as a budget mid-range option, built by CF Moto factories. And yet, despite all this, we hadn't heard anything about the 490. It disappeared like a ghost. The signs were there. Their focus on the 790, despite prototype 390s. We were so sure that the little twin was close to release, we never stopped to look at the hints. And with it, for those few years, KTM went under radio silence. A silence that in January 2023 was finally broken. During an interview with Autocar India, Stefan Pirer admitted that, in the meantime, the entire 490 platform had been scrapped. The reason? Officially, he saw ballooning R&D costs, up to a point where the platform sales were not going to be that profitable. They didn't think enough people really wanted the 490 adventure. Instead, the company shifted to making a smaller version of the LC8C. Think of a 690 twin derived from the Chinese 790. Hearing the news, it's safe to say many people were left disappointed. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, I think we can draw our own conclusions. First, it could have been greed. It's no secret that 7 and 890s sold really well. There will always be more money to be made out of an 890 rather than a smaller, cheaper 490. So, KTM introducing a good light adventure bike could have compromised some profits from their bigger sister. But personally, I think there's something else. This is me speculating, but I don't think Pirer was 100% wrong. But probably we didn't get the full truth either. In 2023, supply chains were still far from recovered. Getting anything for a new platform was either impossible or going to be extremely expensive. I think what actually drastically increased was the production cost, not development. For the 490, KTM and Bajaj would have had to set up a brand new factory and assembly line, with completely new parts. And those parts had to come from somewhere. If we think about it, the prototype had to have been at a stage where its research was close to being done. Else their CEO would have never teased the release date. We know that the bike was 6 months to a year from coming out. That has to mean a mostly complete bike was there. But what happens towards the end of development? Supply chains and assembly lines are established. Because building one-off prototypes is one thing. Mass production? That's a different ballgame. With it, the Light Adventure Twin project was canned for good. And right there, in 2023, KTM made one of their most fatal mistakes. One decision that maybe could have saved them. Honestly, this next part is hard for me to understand. We know KTM gave up on the project. By then, they had a close relationship with CF Moto. My point is, there is no way Pierre didn't know about the upcoming 450MT. But somehow KTM CEO simply ignored it. Meanwhile, the Chinese stuck by their guns and released the new light adventure bike at EICMA in 2023. This was truly the first of its kind. A capable, serious, small-capacity ADV. It didn't take long for it to become one of the best-selling motorcycles in Western markets. Multi-month-long waitlists were formed. They were a true unicorn. CF Moto was right. KTM had thrown it all away. Think about it. The Austrians could have had the same success. They could have built the adventure bike of the future. Instead, they decided to scrap it. That's a decision that was going to haunt them for years to come. Because they didn't just miss out on being the first. They stuck themselves in a rut. One that they realistically could not exit quickly. After they scrapped the 490, it's clear to me the Austrians started working on the new generation 390 Adventure. That put them in a situation where they couldn't pivot. Also remember, around that time the Austrians decided to go severely bankrupt. So, picture their situation. They announced a new 390, went under as an entire company, and now their only hope was to get that new single-cylinder ADV up and running. They had no spare resources to pivot. That decision really scarred the company, and put them on a trajectory so wrong it will take them years to get out of. And it's sad. We get to modern days. Finally, KTM realizes they have to pivot, and can slowly afford to do so after the Bajaj acquisition. By now, they're massively behind. Still, for the 490 and for us enthusiasts, there is hope. Spy shots recently showed a new twin being tested together with a sport bike brother. Many people seemingly speculated the usage of the CF Moto engine. And I get why it would make sense, but also, if we study the pictures, the engine casings look nothing alike. The oil side glass is more forward on the KTM, the water pump sits higher on the Austrian machine, that cylinder also looks shorter. In fact, from an outside perspective, I don't see much resemblance. Truthfully told, the market reality of modern times most likely made KTM reconsider the light adventure twin. CF Moto showed that it was not a fad. It's an emerging category that's here to stay. Sure, the orange team missed the boat, but they're not the only ones. And I still believe that at some point we might get that unicorn. Just imagine a 490 twin inside that stunning 390 Adventure chassis. That would be light adventure perfection. Would it have saved them from bankruptcy? Maybe not. But it would have bought them time. Personally, I believe their leadership made such bad decisions that, after the pandemic, not much could have saved them. Even so, they could have been the leaders of this emerging market. And yet they chose to throw it all away. All in the name of short-term gains. Personally, I can't help but think this has to be one of the industry's biggest what-ifs. Our adventure world could have looked much different. It was literally only a matter of months. Thanks for watching.